picture me and Daddy next to it?
No! Don't, Mummy!
Taxpayer money.
Alright.
Yes, people, welcome to the Eden project.
Want to go down that way?
I messaged you about it before. You have to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's something realistically I wouldn't do. I don't really
Let's go, come on!
Hold on.
Sorry. Ooh. Swarming here. Swarming it. We're in the jungle. Welcome to the rainforest.
Stop the banana!
My name's Emma and we'll be spending the next 40 minutes together, which is really lovely. I'm going to tell you some lovely plant stories and stories about Eden and these incredible rainforests around the world. We're going to slowly head towards Southeast Asia and then I'm going to finish in Southeast Asia and then I'm going to let you run wild all around this wonderful bio. But hopefully by then we'll know a little bit more about us and a little bit more about rainforests and a few little stories perhaps. So let's begin. I'm guessing everybody looking at me is on the tours, so that's nice. Hopefully my voice can carry to the outer limits. We have got quite a lot of tours on actually today, which is wonderful. So if you can't hear me, come back and do another one at a different time. But you guys, it's not heat now, so I'm sure you'll all hear me. So the first question I'd like to ask, just to get a little just see where you guys are at. Has anybody been here in this rainforest before? Has anybody walked around this rainforest before? Wow, so there's only a few of you, so put your hands up if you've never set foot in this rainforest before. Oh, that's wonderful. New people from the Eden Project. That's lovely. Well, thank you very much for turning up today, and whether you've been here or not. It's lovely to see everybody.
All right.
I'll do. So here she is. She's really massive. We've got about 220 metres that way in length, over 100 metres in width, and from the lowest point, which is pretty much where the maps are, to the top, you're looking at about 50 metres, which can be the height of some of these amazing canopies in the rainforest. And they get higher than that because you get the emergent trees. Let's start with Eden really. The Eden Project has been open for 22 years. We've just had our birthday. We opened her in 2001. She was a Millennium Project, and you may have heard of that. They were going up around the country. She was one of them. We got a lot of funding from there and the EU and lottery funding and all that. But then we had to put money in as well. So it cost about £100 million to build, which may sound a lot, but not back then. But it probably would have cost double in this day and age actually. So we were very lucky that Tim Smith, who was one of the founders, actually dug his toes in and actually got this built. It probably wouldn't have been built otherwise. So why was it built? What is the Eden Project all about? Well, really, we're quite simple. simple actually. We just wanted to connect people with nature, with the natural world. We wanted to create a global garden, so we just didn't want to talk about the rainforest. We wanted to talk about all the places around the world and how important they are, and how biodiversity is really, really important, and kind of connect people with these wonderful stories. Because we are all pretty connected with nature. I mean, definitely in the COVID time, we all understood that nature was really important to us. But, you know, once upon a time, we were all hunters and gatherers. We were part of the ecosystem. And now, really, as civilizations grew and populations grew, and we actually became sat down and agriculture became really important, and all of that whole development, we kind of moved away from being part of the ecosystem and being on the side of it. But now we really have to connect back with nature and understand how important it is to all of us, because we're losing a lot of the wild spaces on this planet, and it's having a huge effect to the health of this planet. So we wanted to talk about those, and the best way to talk about all of those amazing stories is to put you in a rainforest or put you in a global garden and say, look how amazing plants are. And hopefully by the end of this tour you will go, actually, plants are really, really cool, and they're really intelligent, and they've done some amazing things. So kind of that's why we wanted to create the Eden Project. And also we wanted to connect people with people. You know, we're on the coronation weekend now. We've got a lot of community stuff going on. With the founder of the Big Lunch, we got Eden Communities and the Big Lunch. So we wanted to connect people together as well, and have us all working together as one global planet, which is really important. Now, rainforests are really important too. They are a huge wild area. There's only about 1% of the rainforest really left. I think the coverage of land is about 11%, I think, of rainforest, which really has been cut back in the last 50 years. We've really gone into these wild, amazing rainforests. So this is why we ended up putting a rainforest in the biggest biome, because they're really, really important. So why is a rainforest important? Oh, where is a rainforest first? Well, you probably all know that. It's around the equator, and there's some big land masses around the equator. So you've got the Amazon, and you've got West Africa, the Congo, and then Southeast Asia, and all the wonderful tropical islands. The reason why, and this gives them the name, the rainy forest, because they're around the equator, they're really hot all the time, there's a lot of sunshine there, there's no real season, so they continue to grow, and they've been around for millions and millions of years, over 100 million years, so they've been here for a long, long time, a lot longer than us humans. So that's why they ended up being really important, because they do lots of things to our cycles, our carbon cycle. I like to breathe. I'm a big fan of breathing, and they give us quite a bit of oxygen. So that's good. They lock down the carbon for us. They create lovely white fluffy clouds which reflect the sunlight away, which helps cool the planet. They make rain for themselves, but they also make rain in different regions. They create winds. They're a massive force. They're really, really important to the health of this planet. And they're full of biodiversity. Like I said, they've been around for millions and millions of years. They've had time to adapt and change and survive. So there's lots of different plants and species and wildlife out there. So they're really, really, really biodiverse. Brazil is one of the most biodiverse countries on this planet, and that's because it's got the biggest portion of the Amazon in it as well. So Asia, that area. There were some that came from South America, but a lot of them, and the old ones that we used to use in our medicines and our diet thousands of years ago, all came from really Southeast Asia. And we used to get them from the Silk Road, so they were traded by camel and horses all the way across to Europe, and that's how we got our spices. And we loved spices because they were exotic and they were brilliant and they were sexy and they made your food taste amazing. But they also, because we didn't have any medical science going on back then, they were our medicines as well, because anything that tasted that amazing must be good for you, must heal things. So there were some things that we got right, but there were things that we got wrong as well. And there's a story about the nutmeg. Now, we've got a little nutmeg tree here. He's our male nutmeg tree. But we have a far grander female over there. She's the one in between the tallest tree in front of the bamboo you've got there. Can you all see the tallest tree there? That's our female nutmeg tree. Wow. Now, for a long time, we never produced any nutmeg. And it's quite something to actually just see a nutmeg tree in captivity. That's kind of cool in itself. She had flowers, but because she was a female, she needed a male. So that's how this guy came in here. And he started to produce flowers a couple of years ago. And either whether it was wind or beetles or ants, they pollinated. She got pollinated. And last year we had our first nutmegs, and this year we've got only a few nutmegs this year. And my colleague, who was just here at the start, she actually found this on the floor today. And this is a unripe, so there's not a nutmeg inside, but this is how the nutmegs grow. So nutmeg trees come from the Malacca Islands, which is just above Indonesia. And they grow, they get pollinated, like I said, and then they grow this lovely fruit. And inside is the nut. Now you can barely see it, but that's the beginnings of a nutmeg in there. This is really, you know, you wouldn't see this really in captivity. It's quite something to actually see it. Now we don't think of nutmegs as much really, do we? You know, who's got a nutmeg in their spice drawer? Do you ever use it, or is it just collecting dust at the back? Oh, you guys really hate it. I must admit, I use a lot different. I mean, I'm a big turmeric and ginger fan and all of that. Hardly ever use my nutmeg, but I've got some. So perhaps you guys up with your enthusiasm on nutmeg, I might have to start trying it a bit more. But back in the day, nutmeg was one of the most coveted, you know, spices. Everybody wanted nutmeg. If I was holding a little nutmeg now, one of you back in the medieval times would have mugged me and be running up that hill back to your horse and carriage, or horse, taking a nutmeg with them. Oh, please don't walk across, things are growing on there. But then I understand, because you can't walk through it. So if we all come a bit forward. So thank you for pointing that out. That's all right. So nutmegs were really, really coveted, and the reason why we all loved the nutmeg was because apparently it cured and helped relieve the symptoms of a horrible disease called the plague. So we wanted it. So there's a little smell to it. You can all pass it around, but make sure it comes back to me, because I'm going to be furious if I lose it on the first tour of the day. It doesn't really smell. So around the 1400s, that kind of time, we all wanted nutmegs. But the Ottomans came to power in the Middle East, and they kind of cut off the silk route. So we couldn't get our nutmeg from the silk route. So what did we do? Oh, there you go. Isn't Google a marvellous thing?
Yeah, Jamaica this winter.
She's pulling out the stops now.
Well done.
Thank you very much. There you go. That's what they look like. And can you see that red colour? So there's two spices in mice. You can in nutmeg. You can get mace, which is the covering, which is the red covering, and then you get the nut.
But that's good to use as well.
That's good to use
The red
as
bit
well.
is
Yeah,
good
the
to
mace
use
is
as well.
nice as
Yeah.
well. Love. And there's a little stick, but it doesn't come in this stick. But if you just scratch the surface, that would probably be all right as well. Scratch and sniff, and when you know what you can smell, let me have. You tell me what you think it is. Yes, cinnamon.
Cinnamon stick.
So sorry if you just come back. So this is our cinnamon tree.
Oh, you can smell it, yes.
Lovely cinnamon tree. As you can see, it's got beautiful new leaves at the top.
The smell is
It's just coming out into flower.
Oh, yeah.
We do get little seeds from the flower, but the cinnamon's not from the seeds, it's from the bark. So you're smelling this beautiful cinnamon oil right now, and it's. Did you guys get to smell it? And it's really potent. It's lovely, isn't it? Oh, it's a beautiful smell. Yeah. So how you get cinnamon is you take off the green bark, and it's the inner bark. And then they carefully peel away the inner bark. You've got to have a branch about that big, not leaves.
Yeah.
They would laugh. If I said to them, can you make cinnamon out of this? They would laugh and they'd go away and find me a bigger stick. So you've got to have a big old branch. And they coppice it down so they don't kill the tree. They just cut the tree back and it regrows. So it's very sustainable if it's grown in lovely forests. So it's a record breaker. I love a record breaker. We're standing in the largest bio and I'm holding the largest nut. Brilliant. What can be more better? So the reason why it's called coco de mer, which translates nut from the sea, is because this is a palm tree that grows only in the Seychelles, in the Indian Ocean. Before the Seychelles were explored by the French around the middle of the 1700s, this nut being washed out on shore to the shorelines of Africa and India and places like that. The locals would see this nut and go, "Ooh, look at that nut! Ooh!" Looks a bit like a female bottom. Just say, I know you were all thinking it does. But the locals loved it because it looked like a bit like a female bottom. But they were going, where's it coming from? Nobody knew. It was obviously coming from the sea, so they thought, well, it may be coming from the bottom of the sea in great forests under the sea. And that's why they called it the coco de mer, nut from the sea. But then the French explored Seychelles, they found the coco de mer, and it's this beautiful palm tree. But because it looked like a female bottom, the East thought it may be an aphrodisiac, so they ate loads of the flesh. And us Brits, well, we thought it was really hilarious because it looked like a female bottom, so we brought it home. There was a Victorian here, but they were always like that. And they would shine it up and make trinkets out of it and look, say, look, went to Seychelles, look what I found. But because of that, this poor nut never grew. It was taken away. So the numbers of the coco de mer started to decline. And suddenly the Seychelles thought to themselves, hang on a minute, our coco de mers are getting really low in numbers. And now it's on the endangered list as species endangered. But they recognise this. There's now 2 reserves on the Seychelles. Lovely, about 8,000 trees are growing there now. They're all protected. The nut's protected, so you can't take it out and put it on your mantelpiece and go, look at this nut that looks like a bottom anymore. Not that we're farm. We don't do that anymore, do we? No. Only the Victorians do that. So it's protected. Now, when we first started here and we wanted to plant all of these wonderful plants, a couple of us, not me, collective us, went to the Seychelles and we had a look around the forest and saw the trees growing. And they gave us 2 viable seeds, which is kind of cool. Yeah. Can I show you where we planted them? Okay. We took them up here. It is, yeah. Well,
Savannah.
right, they planted oh, there's a lot of you. I'm gathering as I go. I'm like the Pied Piper. Not saying that you're all about to anything like that, could go horribly wrong. Yeah, I'm not going to make you jump into the sea. So they took these coco de mers and they put one here and they put one down there. And after a good few years, because these are real slow growers, they saw a shoot coming out from here, and this is what it grew into. The coco de mer. Look at it, brilliant. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a whopper. It's got the largest fan span in the world, so it's a bit of a big old metal breaker in itself. Now this tree, when it gets older, and it does take up to, it can take up to 50 years to mature, it'll end up having a trunk like this, and all of these leaves will be right at the top in a top notch, like you see with all the other palm trees around. And then it will flower. It needs a male to also pollinate it, a bit like the nutmeg tree. We haven't got a male. We've only got one. We don't know whether it's female or male. The one down there didn't take, so we only got one. But that's something. And I tell you what, there's not many botanical gardens or gardens other than the Seychelles where they have them growing. Of course, Kew's got them. Kew's got everything.
But they give you a nut.
They make us enough. You can't. It's really hard to get viable seeds nowadays, actually. So there you go. That's our coco de mer. So it's quite something to see. Now, back in the day, they didn't know how these trees pollinated each other because there was obviously a male and a female in the wild. So where there's a mystery, there's always a folk tale. So I'm going to tell you the folk tale of how these amazing, huge trees pollinate. So on a dark and stormy night, when the wind is blowing and the rain is falling, the coco de mer female will pull up her roots and will go on the hunt for a male. A male will spot her and will uproot its roots and he'll go and find her. And when they get together, they embrace. they have a little puddle and they get pollinated. But no human has ever seen this happen, because if a human did discover this, a great lightning flash would struck them dead and they would never be able to tell the tale. Now where there's a mystery, there's always a scientist. And the scientists wanted to really crack the reason of why this tree, how this tree got pollinated. Now, you get a beautiful flower and you get this dangly catkin, which has little flowers on it, and it produces this musty smell. So they reckon beetles or geckos will come and take the pollen back to the female, and that's how it's pollinated. But to be honest with you, I'm sticking with the folktale because I think it's much more interesting. So there you go. You can pick. Yeah. Or don't. You'll get struck down. Okay, let's move on to Southeast Asia.
Look a bit like welcome party. Come on, Savannah, walk faster.
Hey, mommy, the picture or something like that, do you go? It's a new show.
So there's quite a few. Now, a fig, and there's some other figs up there, so those are figs as well, but they're not edible figs. Watchford fig is a more edible one. So it's quite interesting, a fig, because I'm showing you the figs, but actually that's not the fruit, that's the flower. So fig trees don't have flowers, they just develop this fruit. And the flowers are inside the fruit. Now I can't pick one of these to show you, but if I can pick one of these ones, grab that fig there, push it down, Oh! Can be a bit of a distance. I'm going to pass it over. But when you see inside, there's like little so they've got the pollen. Just try not to touch it. I'll just go over that one so I'll show you. I don't want people to touch it because it's a bit of an irritant to that latex. So there you go. So that's the flower part in there. So flowers usually get pollinated by a different flower, and that keeps the genes strong. And that's the same with the fig. So the fig won't pollinate itself. It'll need something to go in there with some pollen. So it has formed this really amazing symbiotic relationship with a little wee wasp. So the wasp, this is a cycle, so just go with me with the wasp.
It's fine.
The wasp has loads of pollen on it already, and she's pregnant with eggs. So she'll fly around the rainforest and suddenly she'll smell a lovely musty smell. And she'll go, ooh, that smells nice. And she'll head to the fig tree. And she'll head to this little area here at the base of the fig, and there'll be a little hole in there. She'll squeeze through the hole. As she squeezes through the hole, she rips off her legs and her wings, and she ends up in the middle of the fig. She flails around in the fig, pollinating it because she's got pollen already from another fig on her body. So that's how it gets pollinated. And she'll lay her eggs in the fig. And then she dies. The male eggs hatch first. They're little grubby things. They then pollinate the unborn female wasps. So the female wasps are born already full of eggs. And then they try to escape through the lining of the fig, but that's way too much activity for them and they end up dying. So that's your male's life cycle, not a lot. The female's eggs then hatch, already impregnated, already got eggs in them. They'll flail around the middle of the fig, getting full of pollen, and they'll bury their way out, and they'll escape, they'll get out. And they'll fly around the rainforest, and suddenly they'll go, ooh, what's that smell? And they'll head to the fig and they'll do the cycle again, and that is how figs get pollinated. So these figs you see they aren't pollinated, and as soon as they get pollinated, they start to swell up to form a fruit. And that's all the lovely fig fruits you will eat, the lovely juicy fig.